Let's make some Easter dollhouse miniatures. And welcome to my channel, Notorious Crafts. I'll show you how to make these miniature Easter cards and miniature bunny cakes. I designed these miniature Easter cards myself and have them available for you on my website, and the link for that is down below in the description. These cards are 1/12 scale, but you can make them into 1/6 scale by enlarging them in your printer settings. I cut out the cards using a pair of scissors, but you can also use a paper cutter to get very nice, clean, straight lines. After cutting out each of the individual cards, I folded them in half to get the card shape. I continued that same process over and over again to get a full set of Easter cards to use as a decoration. Next, I'm going to make my miniature Easter bunny cakes using this silicone mold, and the link to this mold is also down below in the description. The silicone is clear so you can see it on both sides, and the bunnies come in all kinds of sizes, so if you're planning on making these in different size scales, whether it's 1/12 scale or 1/6 scale, which is perfect for Barbies. The first miniature cake that I'm going to make, I'm going to use some white liquid clay from the brand Sculpey. You can also use resin in these molds. I chose liquid clay over resin since I didn't want these cakes to have a glossy finish, and liquid clay is very easy to use. I'm filling up the molds about halfway and then using a toothpick to spread the liquid clay around into the ears and all of the corners of the mold. And then I filled up the rest of the mold using some more of the liquid clay. I used a toothpick to spread out the rest of the liquid clay. This way I got a really nice and even layer. And now I'm also going to go preheat my oven to the right temperature. You can also bake these molds in the oven. I placed the silicone molds directly onto a baking tray since I didn't want it to be uneven on the baking racks. You do not want to overbake liquid clay since it can crack very easily, so bake it per the instructions of the bottle. After they finished baking, I let them cool for about 10 minutes and then they were ready to take out of the mold. So I was able just to pop them directly out of the mold, and I wanted to be very careful around the ears since that is the most fragile part. I did end up with a small air bubble at the bottom. That's because I forgot to shake the molds while the liquid clay was still wet. But luckily that's on the very bottom, so that won't be seen once it's flipped over. And here is how the bigger bunny looks. Next, I'm going to make some more bunnies using some pink polymer clay. These molds are also great for using polymer clay since the silicone is very thick. I softened up the clay by warming it up in my fingers, and then it fit inside of the mold very easily. So I started off just by breaking smaller pieces and filling up the mold. As I added more clay, I just pushed it down further into the mold using my fingers. To really push the clay into every nook and cranny of the mold, I used a toothpick and applied some pressure to get it down into every corner, and then this way there won't be any air bubbles on the other side. So I would just flip it over as I was working and making sure I did not have any air bubbles or any cracks, and if I saw any, I just kept pushing down the clay and checking it on the other side. After pushing it down, I ended up adding some more clay to fill out the mold. Once I was done, I smoothed out the rough edges using my finger to really get a nice, smooth, clean layer. I continued that same exact process into some other sizes of bunnies since I wanted to have a variety of miniature bunny cakes. That is also why I really like using silicone molds for making miniatures, because the molds come in many different sizes, so I can make these in all different scales, whether it's 1/12 or 1/6, so I get a lot of variety out of them. You can bake the polymer clay directly inside of these molds, or you can pop them out if you are very careful since the clay is still wet. I plan on making a lot of these, so I am taking them out of the mold to bake. So I'm going to make some more using different colors, and this way that'll save me a lot of time than having to wait for them to bake inside of the mold. Next, I'm going to make some of these bunny cakes using some really pretty pastel purple clay. And this is the same exact process that I did using the pink clay. I'm just pushing down the clay using the back of the toothpick. And now these are ready to pop out of the mold, and I'm being very careful not to damage them, especially because I have long nails. I'm also double checking the other side to make sure that there aren't any air bubbles and to make sure that the clay filled out the mold perfectly. If you're worried about getting fingerprints inside of the clay, I suggest wearing some rubber gloves so that you don't end up with fingerprints inside of the clay. Now I'll place these colorful bunnies in the oven to bake and harden. Now I'm going to decorate the white bunny, so I have some of this clay adhesive and I cut out a really small triangle from the pink clay to use as the nose for the bunny. So I'm adding some of the clay adhesive to the center, and then I'll place the nose on top of that. For the bunny whiskers, I'm going to use this black liquid polymer clay and I will paint on the whiskers. I have this really thin brush, so I'm going to practice the strokes on top of my glass mat just to make sure I can get a really nice thin line. Now I'm going to very carefully paint on the whiskers. I'm just going to do 2 little lines. And I'll paint on those whiskers on the other side too, and then once I'm done, I will place this in the oven to bake. Here's the final result of my miniature bunny cakes. I absolutely love how the white bunny turned out. I decided not to paint on the purple and pink bunnies since I thought they were really cute as is. I think that using the liquid clay is the best option for these silicone molds since the white bunnies ended up looking the smoothest out of all of these. I think that if I decorated the colorful ones, I could probably hide some of those imperfections. Using resin would also work too if I used some opaque resin. I also really like how these miniature cards turned out. Don't forget to download them from my website. The link is down below in the description. For the cards, I would recommend using some really good quality paper like some glossy paper. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.